This will be the last major free content update for Animal Crossing New Horizons.
They lied. Good morning, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'll be reviewing for you Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 Edition. Honestly, there's not too much to talk about in this upgrade. This is made especially confusing that the 3.0 update, which wasn't the final major update, came out on the same day and introduced quite a plethora of free new content that even made it onto the Switch 1, making it seem like the Switch 2 edition was kind of a bit of a ripoff. Now, I know most people are going to say it's only $5, so why not pick it up? My argument to that is, are you going to pick up a rotten egg just because it was 5 cents? So in this video, my goal is to go over the new changes made to the Switch 2 edition and see if it's worth $5 or if you should just go and spend it on something better on the eShop. First and foremost, the graphics have been improved. I think that's the absolute bare minimum for a Switch 2 edition. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the graphical improvements were that drastic. Now, it could be that I just didn't notice because I thought New Horizons looked fantastic on the regular Switch. But the side-by-side comparison that Nintendo themselves provided showed that there were quite a lot less pixels, and I watched a video that Arlo made, or was it Topic Arlo? They tend to blend together nowadays. He said that some of the textures had been improved. I wasn't particularly paying attention to that. I think the only two things that I noticed were the snowflakes stay on the ground a little bit longer because I was playing this in the wintertime, and the colors seemed a bit more vibrant during the introduction video that plays when you start up a new island. But that's about it. I don't think it's really worth the upgrade if it's not going to radically revolutionize how the game looks. And to top it all off, Nintendo didn't even bother upgrading the performance. So the game still runs at 30 frames per second, which you might be thinking isn't that big of a deal in a game that's this laid back. But it does give New Horizons a bit of a sluggish feeling that I noticed even in the original game. Stuff as basic as reeling in a fish or even just walking around the island feel like they're quite a bit slower than they were on the GameCube. Not quite as bad as Wild World, which was really slow because the DS was handling so much, but it still feels like maybe if this were 60 frames, it would seem a bit smoother. That being said, there are really only a handful of actions that require button presses on time, so I don't think it's too big of a deal, but it definitely does feel like it's a very slow game compared to even Breath of the Wild, which had a 60 frames per second upgrade for free if you had the expansion pack. So this does feel like maybe Nintendo wanted to lower the prices and decided to cheap out on frame rate for the sake of keeping it under $10. You also get the ability to use mouse mode for a variety of tasks, including decorating your house, writing on the bulletin board, and making custom designs. I honestly thought this worked great for decorating the house, as I always thought it was very clumsy moving your furniture around in the original games. I know New Horizons eventually added the ability to enter kind of an omniscient perspective and move things around with the control stick and buttons rather than having your character move them around, but mouse mode is just so much smoother. Writing on the bulletin board, I'm not the best artist, but here's what I wrote with mouse mode, so hopefully you can make up your own mind and see if I did it justice. And as far as custom designs, I wasn't even gonna try it, because my artistic abilities are about as good as what Century of Anticipation looks like. So I will spare you guys the embarrassment. You get a new item called the Megaphone, which uses the Switch 2's microphone to call out for villagers and sometimes even just regular characters. And this worked surprisingly well, except for Ursula. I guess I was pronouncing her name wrong, or I wasn't saying it clearly because it seemed to only work part of the time. But for the most part, the microphone worked okay. I wish it would have been better considering how well the microphone works and stuff like game chat. But it really is only there if you are having trouble finding villagers. Like, for instance, if you're trying to deliver a lost item, which is relatively rare in this game compared to the earlier Animal Crossing games. Now, it is possible to use the megaphone on a Switch 1. It's just that there's a funny little animation that comes with it, and it doesn't actually do anything. I will leave it to you to figure that out for yourself, but I would like to shout out YouTuber Mayor Mori for discovering that fact. So go and check out his channel if you want to see a full reaction. You can now play with up to 12 players online. There's also support for the camera, which allows your face to be over the top of your villager, and game chat. Now, I thought game chat was just broadly available with any game on the Switch 2. I didn't think it had to be hardware specific, but if that's the case, then this is a great game to be able to have game chat with. Although, the upgrade to 12 players feels like that would be just so situational. Like, how many people do you know of who have 12 people that all want to play New Horizons together? That being said, that is the extent of the Switch 2 upgrades. I know, shocking, isn't it? In my personal opinion, I feel like that is absolutely not worth it. Like, go spend $5 on something else. Don't just shell out the money just because you can. The only reason I can think of why you would really, really want to pick this up is if you want to have an island session with 9 through 12 players, if 8 players just isn't enough for you. But again, how many people are really going to be able to have that kind of setup? But if you can do it, that's why I would pick this up. Decorating with mouse mode is really good, but are you really going to pay $5 just for that when the control stick and buttons work pretty well by themselves? I guess if you're like a decorator, like if you really want to do precision custom designs that the control stick just can't provide, I guess this would be worth it. But there's so much free stuff that comes with the upgrade that why not just do that? Now, to be fair, a lot of stuff has been added to New Horizons since I last played it. You now have the option to have Zelda, Splatoon, and Lego-themed furniture and clothing and villagers, which is very neat. Having Tulin in my village was cool, even if I find it bizarre that Tulin is the jock archetype, which is not exactly how I would have classified Tulin in Tears of the Kingdom. I also loved how I was able to decorate my house with a bunch of Zelda-themed stuff. Lego representation is pretty cool. And Splatoon, I didn't have the Splatoon amiibo, so I wasn't able to get access to it. But I think it's nice that Nintendo is pushing Splatoon so much, especially since it's like their only major IP that was released on the Wii U. And it somehow managed to do well considering that system's install base. There were a couple of other neat little additions, like you can now go swimming and find undersea creatures and donate them to the museum. They added the roost so that you can drink coffee. You can put art pieces in the museum now. This has the unfortunate side effect of now there's nudity in Animal Crossing New Horizons, so maybe be aware of that if you don't like seeing Renaissance art, but as someone who really appreciates that kind of stuff, it's nice that Japanese culture is not prudish. They've also added a handful of quality of life improvements, such as being able to craft in bulk if you have all the ingredients, and be able to plant fruits and vegetables. In my opinion, New Horizons was by far my favorite game in the Animal Crossing series. It was fun to actually have an objective to work toward, and actually feel like you earned the credits. In the original Animal Crossing games, you'd just get the credits whenever KK Slider played a song. But that was as easy as just waiting until 8 o'clock at night on Saturday and just listening to him perform. Whereas you actually have to earn the credits in New Horizons. I loved the progression where you'd have to build the shop, and you'd have to build the museum, and you'd have to hype up the island over time. And that was great for someone like me that really loves story in video games. Unfortunately, I got bored of New Horizons way quicker this time around than I did when I first played it, and even on my second playthrough. Once I got the bare minimum of showing off cool Zelda-related stuff on my island, I said, well, that's just included in the free update anyway, so how long am I gonna drag out this Switch 2 edition footage? I think there's so much that's been included not only in the 3.0 update, but all the updates from 2020 to 2021 that have made this quite a bit better of a game. I know there are people out there that'll bemoan features from previous Animal Crossing games that still aren't there. But for me personally, the ability to swim, the ability to bulk craft, be able to put paintings and Renaissance art in the museum, those are some of my favorite additions. And especially the Zelda stuff, that was also really cool. So I personally think you should just save your $5, unless you have 9 to 12 player online. The megaphone, while cool, is kind of just a gimmick, and the mouse mode works well enough, but not really a selling point. But I do think New Horizons is still a really good game for people that like laid-back styles of games. I guess you could call it a cozy game. I'm not particularly a fan of that term, but if that's what's going to sell you on it, then I'm willing to push aside my feelings and say, alright, call it a cozy game if you want to. I almost forgot to mention one thing before we go, and that's that Happy Home Paradise is not included with the Switch 2 edition, but I have also heard that the new Captain's Resort is basically Happy Home Paradise, but for free, so you might as well save the $20. I know that you get it for free with the expansion pack, but do you really need 2 different game modes where you have to decorate houses for villagers and you also can't fail as long as you put in the required furniture? I don't know, it seems weird to have to pay for something that's already in the game just for different furniture. But if you really like decorating for other people, or you wish that Happy Home Designer was ported to the Switch, then there you go. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if I wasn't clear on anything, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!